Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into something really critical, a crisis in women's health that is so often ignored. For decades, literally millions of women have been told their symptoms are just stress, that it's normal, or that it's all in their head. But behind all those dismissals, there's a staggering reality of undiagnosed suffering. So let's start by really getting a handle on the true scale of this crisis. Just listen to this quote from Dr. Thais Eliabadi. It just perfectly frames how massive this problem is. Can you imagine going to an eye doctor because you can't see, and they just tell you you're being dramatic? It sounds absurd, right? But that is exactly the experience countless women are having with their own reproductive health, and it's something that just has to change. And that number? It's a shocking 90%. Now, this isn't just a statistic on a screen. It represents millions and millions of women who are suffering from the leading causes of infertility in the world, just bouncing from doctor to doctor without a diagnosis, without any answers, and certainly without any relief. So what is this crisis, really? Well, behind what often get brushed off as just, common complaints, things like really painful periods or acne or trouble with weight, are two hidden epidemics. We're talking about Polycystic Ovary Syndrome and Endometriosis, and they affect a staggering 1 in 7 women, and honestly, it's probably even more than that. If you've ever had your pain or your symptoms downplayed or just completely ignored, I need you to hear this. You are not alone, and you are not crazy. This experience is the unfortunate reality for so many. But understanding what's really going on, that's the very first step to fighting back. All right, let's start with PCOS, or Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. This is the single most common hormone disorder in women of reproductive age, and yet it's one of the most misunderstood and misdiagnosed conditions out there. It's a real paradox. Okay, so the very first thing we have to get straight is that the name itself is a huge problem. PCOS does not mean you have cysts on your ovaries. To this day, doctors will tell patients, well, I don't see a cyst, so you can't have PCOS. And that is just completely 100% wrong. So let's be crystal clear here. PCOS isn't just a problem with your ovaries. It is a systemic hormonal and metabolic condition. At its core, it's really an insulin issue, which is why it can mess with everything from your skin and your hair to your mood and your weight. And it is incredibly common, even in lean women. Actually, about 25% of patients with PCOS are not overweight at all. So how is it supposed to be diagnosed? Well, it's actually simpler than you might think. Doctors should be using a 2 out of 3 rule. It just means you only need to meet 2 of these 3 criteria. So, number 1, symptoms of high androgens, things like acne or hair thinning. Number 2, irregular ovulation, which usually means your periods are all over the place. And number 3, either that classic string of pearl look on an ultrasound or a very high AMH level from a simple blood test. And right here, this is where it gets tricky, and it's why so many doctors miss the diagnosis. Just look at this table. There are actually 4 different types or phenotypes of PCOS. For instance, look at type B. You can have high androgens and irregular periods, but that box for PCOS ovaries is unchecked, which means your ovaries can look totally normal on an ultrasound. Or look at type C. You can have regular periods and still have PCOS. This variation is so important to understand. A doctor just can't rely on one single symptom. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the second hidden epidemic, endometriosis. And I want to start with maybe the most important message you can hear today. Debilitating period pain is not normal, period. This is really the key distinction we have to make. We're not talking about some mild cramps that a couple of Advil can take care of. We are talking about life-disrupting pain. Pain that forces you to cancel plans, to miss work or school, or even pain that's so bad you end up in the emergency room. That right there, that is a massive red flag. So what's actually happening inside the body? With endometriosis, tissue that acts a lot like the uterine lining starts growing in places it just shouldn't be, like on the ovaries, the bladder, or the bowel. So every single month, this tissue bleeds internally, and that causes severe inflammation, scarring, and of course that debilitating pain. This timeline, it's just tragic. It perfectly illustrates the long, painful journey to a diagnosis. Just follow along. It takes on average 9 to 11 years and visits to between 5 and 10 different doctors to finally get an answer. Just imagine that. That's a decade of being told your pain isn't real, while inside your body is literally being damaged.
So let's talk about the symptoms, because they often get mistaken for other things. Beyond just that severe period pain, are you experiencing deep pain during sex? What about chronic bloating that always gets written off as some kind of GI issue? Or painful bowel movements? Or maybe what feels like constant UTIs, but every time you get tested, the results come back negative? If any of that is sounding familiar, you need to keep listening.
Look, understanding these conditions is the first step, but I know it can also feel really overwhelming. So now we're going to shift from just learning about this to taking action. Knowledge really is power, and this is your toolkit to become your own best health advocate. So how do you prepare for that next doctor's visit? First, track your symptoms and be specific. Don't just say it hurts. Say the pain made me miss 3 days of work this month. Second, you have every right to ask for an AMH blood test to check your egg count. That's vital. Third, you can and should demand a pelvic ultrasound. And maybe most importantly, if a doctor tells you it's normal and tries to dismiss you, your very next step is to find another doctor, period. And you know what? There are powerful things you can start doing today, right now. Since both of these conditions are driven by hormonal imbalance and inflammation, your lifestyle is your first line of defense. You can start by addressing insulin and inflammation, and that means cutting back on sugar and processed foods. Prioritize your sleep and manage your stress, because they have a direct impact on your hormones. You can even consider key supplements like Inositol and vitamin D, which research has shown can really help regulate these systems. So we'll end with this question. This isn't just a medical issue, it's a social one. It's about taking women's health seriously and finally validating their experiences. The most crucial point of all is that you know your body better than anyone else. If something feels wrong, it probably is. So please keep fighting for answers, because you absolutely deserve to be heard and you deserve to be healthy.